Good
Yeah.
evening, Artificial Hearts family. We're here excited for another episode of Artificial Hearts. We're here with a very special guest, all the way from Japan, but he's living here now in the States, and he's with us, and we're really glad and happy to have him here with us. Ken Miyagi, say hi to our folks, Ken.
Hey, Guillermo.
It's a
Thank you so
pleasure to
much for
have you.
having me.
Oh no, this is great. Ken, usually when we introduce our guests, we always ask them to maybe tell us a little bit about themselves. So
Yes.
could you please introduce yourself to our audience? Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're doing, like where in Japan you're from.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I'm Ken Miyagi. I'm from Japan. And then, as Guillermo said, I'm a PhD student at Princeton Theological Seminary now. My department is history. And then I'm working on the Japanese American Christian history. Especially, I'm interested in the transpacific relationship between US and Japan in terms of empire and religion. And then now I'm working on the comprehension exam. And then I almost done. And then now I started writing the paper about Latin American Christianity. Yeah, that will be new for me. But at the same time, the topics is challenging to me. That was exciting.
Awesome. And I wanna know a little bit more, Ken, about research history. But before, I think a lot of our viewers, a lot of the people that follow us, I think they're probably really curious to know, like, how was life in Japan growing up? And
Yeah.
how did you embark on this journey to becoming a historian of Japanese Christianity? So what were you doing kind of before that? And what was the process that led you to become a historian?
Yeah. I grew up Christian home. And I am a fifth generation of Christianities. That is very rare in Japan. But at the same time, it is natural for me to think about God. And then when I was a college student, my father moved to United States. Like he studying theology at Boston University. His experience challenged me. At the time, I didn't understand why my father started studying theology. I don't know what is a theology. And then kind of as a challenge against my father, in my undergrad, I studying atheist.
Ethics?
Atheist.
Oh.
Atheist novel. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, his name is Kurt Vonnegut. And then, I don't know, but I would like to explore more how to challenge against Christianity. But the funny thing is that the atheist novelist emphasized the religion. Like he said, function of religion was important for ethics. Even though he was an atheist, he identified himself as Unitarian Universalist. Through his study, ironically, I spark my research interest in religion.
So Ken, not to interrupt you. So your interest in religion began, you rebelled against your father who studied theology.
Yes.
And you came in contact with this atheist philosopher who was saying that religion was important for society.
Yeah. Yes.
Interesting. Cool. And now I'm just curious now. So is your dad a pastor?
No. My father was a business person, salaryman in Japan. But, he did early retirement. And then he studied working at the church as a staff, administrative staff. And then after he retired, he wanted to study theology more. And then he moved to Boston University.
Oh, got it. So he was just doing it for like a general interest.
Yes.
And as somebody, and your dad is also Christian, right?
Yes,
Because
right.
you said you're for, oh, awesome. Okay, sorry. So continue. So
Yeah.
you come across this atheist philosopher. It sparks your
Yes.
interest in religion.
Yeah.
And how does that kind of draw your interest into Christian religion in Japan?
Oh yeah. I mean, you know what? As you know, Christianity in Japan is super minority. That's why, Japanese Christianity have to think about, what is a Christianity in Japan? And then at the same time, I think Japanese people viewed Christianity as Western religion. And then, Japanese people do not think like Christianity is the religion for Japanese.
Oh,
Yeah.
why? Because it's
And then, yes, go ahead.
oh no, sorry. I just said they don't think it's for Japan because it's a foreign religion. Or
Yeah, I mean,
they see it as a foreign religion.
yes, yeah, for Christianity, yeah. And then, yeah, I'm thinking about how, yeah, I live in Japan as a Christian. In order to do that, I'm curious about what is Christianity. Yeah, and then, yeah, I'm interested in Christianity in the world and in Japan as well.
That's awesome. And I wanted to ask you before you kind of go forward and tell us a little bit more of how you came of how you're trying to figure that out. I also maybe I think it'll be interesting to tell us a little bit about how did Christianity come to Japan? Like how did Christianity, just maybe our audience isn't familiar.
Yeah.
What are some of the tensions that maybe that relationship has had in the country?
Yeah.
And maybe like how has your experience been as a Christian in Japan? So let's go with the first one. How did Christianity get to Japan, and how was it received?
Yeah, as you know, and as the audience knows, in the 16th century, Roman Catholic missionaries started evangelization in Japan. But at the end of the day, in the later 17th centuries, Edo shogunate prohibited Christianity totally. And then 250 years, Japanese Christianity was prohibited. Of course, as you know, there was a kakure, which is hidden Christianities. But officially, until later 19th century, Christianity was prohibited in Japan.
Wow. Can you tell us a little bit about the hidden Christians? I think that's a really interesting story.
Oh,
for people that might not be familiar with that.
Yeah, hidden Christianity is a super unique group. I mean, as I mentioned, Edo shogunate, prohibited Christianity. As a result, former Christians should be converted to Buddhist. Yeah, and then, the Japanese peoples was urged to demonstrate, their Buddhist. And then they have to demonstrate their belongingness to the Buddhist temple.
How did they
local
do that?
area. Yeah. And then Catholic Christians, Catholic Christians said, we are Buddhist. But, explicitly, they continued their, faith in Christianity. In this process, they transferred the language of Christianity, like by using, by using the language of Buddhism, or by using the literal stuff of Buddhism, they, pretended to be a Buddhist, but they still preserved the faith in Christianity.
Was it a kind of like syncretism between the two religions?
Yeah, I think, we can say syncretism, but at the same time, I think, Catholic Christian intentionally transformed, religion. Yeah, in this process, there were the syncretism.
Interesting. Well, that's really interesting. And could you tell us? I think a lot of people are kind of curious: is why did they start persecuting Christians in Japan? Like, why did they not want Christians in the island?
Yeah, I think there are several reasons, but I can pinpoint Japanese government at that time, like Edo shogunate, concerned about Western threat, like in line with Christian missionaries, Western imperialism, invade the world, and then Edo shogunates, was worried about imperial power alongside Christianity.
Yeah, because these were Portuguese and then later
Yes.
Portuguese Spanish missionaries, right, that were
Yes.
coming to the island. And how has that past affected modern day perceptions of the Japanese about Christianity, do you think? How has that kind of, kind of that fear of outsiders or of imperialism,
Yes,
that association between Christianity and empire, how has that kind of affected modern day perceptions of non-Christians, Japanese about Christians?
Yeah, thank you so much for such a good questions. I mean, in the process of a prohibition of Japanese Christianities, I mean, Edo shogunate created, strong social system which preserve Buddhism. As I mentioned, Japanese people have to demonstrate their belongingness to Buddhist temple. And then in this process, Buddhism and, kind of government, make good collaboration. I mean, after modernization, Japan permit religious freedom. And then Christian missionaries in the later 19th centuries started. But, as I mentioned, Japanese people basically had connection to Buddhism. This is very challenging against Japanese people who would like to convert to Christianity. At the same time, in terms of religion and empire, I think, the modern missionary to Japan in later 19th centuries had also strong connection with Western imperialism. Like, initially, US pressured Japan to open the gate to start trade. In line with that, American missionary started their activity. And then, for Japanese people, American imperialism and American Christianity was, entangled. But from my understanding, the history is a little bit more complicated. You know what? Japanese, samurai group turned down Edo shogunate in order to start Japanese, modern imperial nation.
When was this? Is this Meiji Restoration?
Yeah, Meiji Restoration. And then in the Meiji,
just for the
yeah, in the Meiji Restorations, some samurai group believe that, Japanese new imperial government should learn Western civilization. And then, Western missionaries talk that, Christianity would be helpful to make modern nation. For example, some American missionaries said, if Japanese Christianity grew, Japan became the Great Britain in Asia. And then from my understanding, Western missionary, to some extent, supported Japanese imperial building.
Why? Oh, because they thought that it was going to industrialize and accept the West. Oh, okay.
Yeah, like
it's
Christianity.
Become westernized.
Yes.
Or
in order to become, yeah. That's why, Japanese imperial, staff believe Christianity is Western religion, and Japanese people did.
Oh, that's interesting. And
Yeah.
that reminds me, don't
Yeah.
you think that's kind of similar to how economists think about China today? They
Yeah.
think like if China becomes industrialized, it's gonna
Yeah.
open up and it's
Yeah.
gonna become, well, not really, it's just gonna become an imperial superpower,
Yeah.
which is what
Yeah.
Japan became in like the first half of the 20th century.
Yeah.
But with its own like agenda and
Yeah.
ambitions that do not
Yeah.
necessarily align with those of like the quote unquote like Western nations.
Yes.
And awesome. And is there anything else that you think is interesting for people to know about Japan during this period?
Uh, like in the modern period,
Yeah,
19th
in the
century.
modern period.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, you know what? As I mentioned, Japanese people or Japanese imperial staff viewed Christianity as Western religion or foreign religion. And then after that, some Japanese Christian, like Kanzo Uchimura Kanzo, as we discuss later,
Yeah,
try
well, I
to,
want to save some time to focus on him.
yeah, they try to, indigenize Christianity. Especially before World War II, Japanese Christians try to Japanize Christianity. But after World War II, you know what? Japan lost. And then, Japanese Christians try to make Christianity more Western religion. I mean, after World War II, Japanese Christian or Japanese peoples, reflect on like, the bad combination between religion and Japanese empire, which, made, imperial activity in East Asia. And then Japanese people and Japanese Christians thought, we have to divorce religion from empire or, nationalism. And then they wanted to make more, Western religion. This is irony, but I think, that's why today's people still think Christianity is Western religion or foreign religion in Japan.
Interesting. Well, that's so interesting. Do you think that had the effect of making people more adverse to Christianity, more opposed to Christianity, by like quote unquote Westernizing it?
I mean, this is, very complicated. Japan, try to be modern nation or try to make modern nation even after World War II. Yeah, in order to do that, they try to learn Western knowledge, including Western Christianity or Christianity. And then, there are some good Christian university in Japan. Some people would like to go such university. And then there are so many population who had positive view toward Christianity. But at the same time, it is so tough for people to convert to Christianity. Because as I mentioned, Buddhists have strong connection with people on the ground. And then kind of very complicated. Some people have positive view to Christianity. But at the same time, Japanese people cannot become easily Christians.
And that's because of this like strong hold that Buddhism has in the culture, right?
Yes.
Even in those who are not necessarily quote unquote religious.
Yes.
Interesting. So in light of that, I'm kind of curious, like how was it for you personally growing up as a Christian in like a majority Buddhist country? Like what are some of the challenges or opportunities that you have as like a minority?
Yeah. I mean, as I mentioned, I grew up Christian home, and then my parents are very strict Christians. But, Japanese culture, entangled with Japanese religion. Like there are a festival in summer. In the festival, Japanese Shinto and Japanese Buddhists, supported such festival. And then, when I was a kid, I want to join such festival, but then my parents didn't, accept, such activities.
Yeah. That's like Halloween. That's like Halloween here for evangelicals. Yeah. For me and my family,
yeah. And then, like this is Japanese people's love playing soccer and baseball. And then there are so many, sports clubs, but such sports club played on Sunday.
Yeah, which is your holy day of worship, right?
yeah. But
like
my
me
parents,
with Sabbath, yeah.
Push me to go to the church, yeah.
But did you have was there any kind of prejudice from the non-people? How was that? Or not really?
I think, sometimes there is tension between Christian and non-religious persons, but basically, Japanese people's, respect, people's faith. Yeah, but at the same time, in Japanese societies, there are strong peer pressure.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and then, like as I mentioned, my friends, asked me to join the festival, and then I declined. My friends.
That looks bad, right?
Yeah.
It looks like you're insulting the group.
Yeah.
Or you're being
something
selfish.
like that. Yeah.
Right. Awesome. Wow. That's really interesting. Yeah, I find it really fascinating of how it's like being a Christian in a non-Christian society. I think that's something that I've been thinking a lot about lately.
Yeah.
Kind of the differences that Christianity makes.
Yeah.
In the not only in the lives of individual peoples, but even in cultures and in societies. And I know that we've talked a lot about Christianity in Brazil and in Japan and the US. And I know you talked about kind of your family heritage once to me.
Yeah.
About Christian Japanese samurais. So who were these Christian Japanese samurais? What is your connection with them?
Yeah, my ancestors was samurai and Christians. As I mentioned, I'm a fifth generation of Christians in Japan. And then my, ancestors converted to Christianity. But, my ancestors from Okinawa. There is slightly different from mainland Japan. But at the same time, there is overlapping in terms of the social structure. Like in Okinawa, there was samurai class. And then my ancestors belonged to such class. Yeah, and then I think, in order to understand samurai Christianity, I think the history of, modern, history of formation of modern Japan is important. Of course, Okinawa as well. Okinawa held Japan-China dual subordination before modernization. Okinawa government sent foreign diplomacy to both Japan and China. But in the process of, Japanese Meiji restorations, Japanese government pressured Okinawa to be part of Japan.
Oh, so it wasn't part of Japan before that?
As I mentioned, Okinawa, had a, complicated relationship toward both China and Japan.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. They negotiated with both Japan and China.
And they ended up going to Japan.
Yes.
Oh.
And then in this process, there are two groups in Okinawa samurais. One group was pro-Japan and pro-modern. Other group was pro-China.
Oh.
And then my ancestors belonged to pro-Japan and pro-modern. And then I heard such group, some people in such group embrace Christianity. Like in order to become more modern, some samurais try to use Christianity, or such peoples embrace Christianity. And then my ancestors, embrace Christianity, I think, in order to be modern people.
Wow, that's so fascinating. Do you know how they converted? Like how they like met, how they became Christians?
Yeah, basically, such samurai was influenced by American missionary.
American, probably?
Yeah, basically American.
American, okay.
Yeah, I heard, my ancestors was converted by, Methodist missionary from America, from United States. Yeah.
Was this like 1890?
Yeah, at that period. Yeah.
Because it said fifth generation, it'd be like 100 years ago.
Yes.
Ah, interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. And then I think, just a moment. This story is related to some extent Uchimura. Uchimura was also former samurai, class. And then, some ex-samurais embrace Christianity because some samurai lost their status. Before Meiji restorations, samurai basically was the top in the Japanese social structure.
Wow.
But in the Meiji restorations, such samurai have to lose their status. And then, some people's, some samurai, some ex-samurais wants to believe, alternative. And then Christianity offer some language.
Wow, that's so interesting. And so what you're saying is like a lot of the samurai, they lost their status during the Meiji Restoration.
Yes.
And some of them converted to Christianity. And one of those was your fifth generation ancestor.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. And I think that kind of brings us to kind of the next point. So like we're both here at Princeton Seminary. One of my heroes is somebody you already mentioned, Uchimura Kanzu.
Yeah.
And there's this quote I really like by him, where he says that true Christianity is not a religion, but the revelation of God. Religion of this world is humans demanding to gods, but Christianity is God's demanding to humans. Religion puts emphasis on humans' efforts, devices, studies, cultivations, logics, training, and so forth. Whereas Christianity centers the command and grace of God, ordinary religions approach to gods through various means, whereas Christianity directly enters joy of the grace without means. Thus, the difference between religion of this world and the revelation of God is fundamental. The product of this world is completely different than that of God. So tell our audience, the folks who are following us, who are going to be watching this podcast, or who are watching this podcast, who was Uchimura Kanzu? What is his significance for Japanese Christianity?
To be honest, I personally respect and like Uchimura Kanzo because my uncle and aunt belong to the non-church movement.
Interesting.
My relatives in Okinawa is a member of a non-church movement. That's why, I, respect Uchimura. And then, as I mentioned, Uchimura started non-church movement in Japan. which is a critique on, denomination. Denominations, highlight their doctrine or their church polities. But Uchimura thought that in Japanese context, such denominations, sometimes make some trouble. For Japanese, Christianity is just Christianity, rather than, the Christianity of Baptists or Christianity of Methodists. And then Uchimura wants to Chimura tried to overcome such, denomination, Christianities. But, I'm very interested in him, in particular, his nationalism.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah. Do you know his famous word, 2J?
Yeah.
Japan and Jesus.
Jesus, yeah. I love the two.
Yeah.
Jesus and Japan.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, his generations, it's highlighting the, nationalism. At the same time, they struggle to keep faith, in the context of the rising of Japanese nationalism. Yeah, even though Chimura highlighted Japan, he, hesitated respecting, Japanese, imperial, demonstration, like he hesitated, bowing towards, the imperial script on education.
Mhm.
That's why he got fired
Wow.
on his job of teacher. And, he criticized Russo-Japanese war. Of course, he changed, his position towards the war. He became a pacifist. Yeah, even though he was, supporting for before Russo-Japanese war. But I think, his such complicated, position towards the nationalism and Christianity is very interesting for me.
Mm-hmm. And how so? How so?
Yeah, I mean, this point, makes us realize his significance towards the next generation. So I think, his student, who is Yanai Taro, is very important for Japanese Christianity. Yanai Taro was a member of non-church movement and a student of Chimura. He was a professor at the Tokyo Imperial University before World War II. But he criticized, Japanese imperial activity after invasion of China.
Wow.
As a result, he got fired from Tokyo Imperial University. He's a, minority who criticized Japanese imperial activities before and during World War II. But he was also nationalist. He said, he loved Japan. That's why he believed he had to criticize injustice of Japanese imperialism.
So it's like a positive love for country.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the best way to say, like, he was a patriot versus
yes,
like a jingoist, like a nationalist.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So he loved his country, but he understood that nationalism was not Japan at its best.
Yes.
Awesome. Wow,
You're right.
Amazing. And what happened to him? Did he survive the war?
Yeah. And then I think, during this process, he seems to identify himself as prophet. Like, prophet in Old Testament, laude.
Okay. So was he Pentecostal?
No. He was a member of the,
non-church
movement.
Right.
And then he was leading the non-church movement. he was a kind of a leader after Chimura. Yeah. And then he often, led Bible study on Sunday. No church movement basically, hold the Bible study on Sunday.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then he was a teacher of Bible study in non-church movement.
And I wanted to ask you, like the non-church movement, do they have like a sermon, or is it more like a Bible study, the service?
I think it's so tough to define, but basically, Bible studies. But as far as I know, there are some people who talks about kind of sermon on Sunday.
Okay,
Bible
there
study.
is a sermon. Okay,
Yeah.
there is a sermon.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, I've always been kind of interested in how, well, I think what I found interesting about him as like a Seventh-day Adventist is his pacifism, his belief in the second coming, his separation of church and state. Yeah, it really feels like he's borrowing on this dissenting Protestant tradition that kind of goes back to the Anabaptists. And he's definitely one of the most fascinating figures that I've met. That Uchimura Kanzo, right? That I've discovered in in my very like brief study of Christianity in East Asia, and in light of that, because I know you've told me a little bit more about kind of the history of Christianity in Japan, and there were like there were different Christianities, right? There were Christianity that supported the empire, the Japanese empire, and Uchimura was the one that was going against the empire, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's I find that so interesting. Reminds me a little bit of like what kind of what happened in Germany, and I think it's also a council that we here in the U.S. would be wise, or in Brazil as well, to adopt as nationalism becomes something more popular. So I think Chimura Kanzo is like a very good example of somebody who was willing to separate true Christianity from like a false, distorted, instrumentalized form of the religion that supports these nationalist projects. And in light of that, I know you're doing a lot of research now at Princeton. You're finishing up your comprehensive exams and you're going to start writing your dissertation. I think a lot of people here are curious to know, so like, why are you studying Japanese Christianity, Japanese Christianity, and what is your research about? Like, what are you studying? You want to write about?
Technically, my concentration is American Christianity, but my dissertation topics is transpacific between Japan and U.S. relationship, and then I wanna focus on the migration of Japanese Christianities. You know what? Japanese migrants initially thought that their migration to North America was one of colonization. I mean, their mind was entangled with Japanese imperial idea. And then Japanese empires, wants to expand. And then, the migration to North America was one of them. That's why Japanese immigrants believe they were servant of Japanese empire, even in the North America. But, as Japanese imperial expansion in North America failed. There was, Japanese Exclusions Acts of 1924. And, after Pearl Harbor, Japanese immigrants and Japanese Americans was forced to move to incarceration camp. And then I'm interested in such transition from, Japanese imperial servant to racial minority in North America. Especially, I would like to explore how Christianity's help for Japanese migrants to transform their identity, or for Japanese immigrants to survive. And then, I'm curious about such migration history in terms of religion and empires.
Have you made any like interesting discoveries so far that you can tell?
Oh, yeah. As I mentioned, initially Japanese migrants thought their migration to North America was colonization.
Mm-hmm.
In this process, Japanese immigrant Christians said, their colonization is North America, echoed the colonization of Puritan in New England.
Really?
Yeah. And then they tried to apply the language of, Christianity and imperial activity in New England to the California by Japanese Christians.
Wow. And these Japanese migrants were Christians, right, Ken?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So they saw themselves as like the new Puritans in California.
Yeah, something like that.
Oh, interesting. Like the new, the new Israel.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Japanese people sometimes use, we have to look for new canon.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I mean, I feel like this history, it must be very personal to you and very meaningful to you.
Yeah.
So how meaningful is this to you? This research?
Yeah, while I was studying, the history of Japanese Christian migrants, my studies is related to my family history. My great grandmother my great grandmother was in China during and before World War II. And then they learned the business in China. They engage in Japanese imperial activity, even though they are Christian. As a historians or as a Japanese Christians, I have to keep repentance for what we did in East Asia. Even though, I am a Japanese Christian, even though I am a minority as a Christians in Japan, but, my ancestor, get involved in, Japanese imperialism in East Asia. At the same time, my great-grandfather was in Los Angeles before World War II.
Wow.
As a result, he was forced to move to the incarceration camp during World War II. He was kind of, one of the racial minority in North America. But I think my family histories, shows the complexity of personality of Japanese migrants.
Yeah.
Yeah, in East Asia, where Japanese people was a, imperial servant before and during World War II. Wow. On the other hand, they just migrate to North America. They became racial minority. They have to transform their, positionalities. And then, these histories, makes me understand the context of my family history.
Wow. That's so cool, man. Like, yeah, I'm definitely excited when the book comes out. we can have an episode here for you to release it.
Yeah.
So I like, from what you're telling me, like your history is something like it also involves a kind of personal component, like a me search about your own past and your own family story.
Yeah.
Navigating this kind of complex relationship of being a Christian in Japan and being a Japanese Christian in the US.
Yeah.
Wow. That's cool, man. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we definitely got to do another one when the book comes out. I mean,
Yeah.
it's gonna take a while. I'm writing my dissertation right now,
Yeah.
but the invitation is out if you want to promote it here on this platform. Wow, that's awesome, man. And kind of on a lighter note, I know you worked with publicity in Japan, right?
Yeah.
Before
Yeah.
becoming a historian of Christianity, before coming to Princeton Seminary.
Yeah.
I kind of want to know, like, what are some of your favorite anime that
Oh.
you've watched?
Oh. Thank you. Such a good questions. Yeah, there are tons of
Yeah.
animes which I like, but my favorite one is Slam Dunk.
Slam Dunk,
Do you know?
the basketball one.
Yeah, basketball. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
because Yudai was here because he's our mutual friend.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I think he did some artwork for that one.
I don't think so.
Wait, what's the other basketball one?
Kuroko no Basket.
That was the one.
Yeah. Yeah. I
It
think
was
so.
Slam
Yeah.
Dunk. Yeah, well, it
Yeah.
was that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was that one. Sorry, but yeah. Oh, so you really like that one?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
are there any other ones you like that are like a close second?
Yeah. I think, there is one classic which I like. This is Hinotori.
Ah, Hinotori.
Yeah, Hinotori was painted by Tezuka Osamu. Tezuka Osamu was a giant of Japanese manga.
Really? Well, what other
Yeah,
famous ones has he done?
he
What's
wrote,
his most famous
I
in
think,
the US?
I, Atomic Boy, Tetsuman Atomic.
Oh, Atomic Boy
Yeah, 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 yeah,
or Atom Boy. Atom Boy, I think. Yeah, I think I
yeah,
know.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, Atom Boy,
he's an
yeah,
older guy then, right?
yes, super
Oh, he's
old
older.
guy.
Oh,
Yeah,
is he alive still?
no,
No. Okay, yeah.
yes,
It's a really old anime. That's what I was
yes,
thinking. Oh
yeah,
wow.
yeah,
Cool.
yes,
Cool. Awesome. Oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
And yeah, I really like Cowboy Bebop.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, Cowboy Bebop. I got like when I'm done with my PhD, I might like watch some like when I have time. There's
yeah,
like there's a lot of fun, like interesting ones. I really like how anime, like Japanese anime, I feel like the writing is a lot better than like a lot of American cartoons because it delves into very kind of deep, well, depending on the anime, right? Because you have different
yeah,
kinds of anime, but you have
yeah,
some that are very like, even the ones that are kind of geared to a younger audience, they delve
yeah,
into very kind of deep kind of themes, I think, of human
yeah,
existence and life and
yes,
yeah, whereas America, I think they kind of sacrifice sincerity for irony a lot. So it's just like slapstick kind of stuff. As
yeah,
a and the Japanese kind of like some of them like kind of really go deep, kind of like Death Note, um, uh,
yeah,
or even like Cowboy Bebop,
yeah,
or yeah. So I think yeah. Well, my friend, we're almost done.
yeah,
Do you have any like final words you want to leave? Well, I have one final question,
yes,
and then that we always kind of ask our guests. So our Artificial Hearts, the platform
yeah,
you're on, that we're really happy to have you here. It's a podcast dedicated to warming the hearts that have become cold through relativistic secularism. And the question that I have for you is, how has studying Japanese Christianity in the U.S. how has
yes,
that impacted your faith? And we could even say, how do you think it has like humanized you more?
yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for these questions. I mean, my studies of Japanese immigrant Christians impacted my faith totally. I mean, as I mentioned, in the process of migration to North America, Japanese people, Japanese immigrants became racial minorities. And then I think, they offer such rich language, like in order to survive in the adversity, or in order to resist against, like racial power. I mean, by studying, Japanese migrants in the intermediate camp, I really learn a lot. And then, this makes me humble as a people, as a Christians, as a scholar. And I think, in the future, I want to study more marginalized group in Japan and in Japanese Christianity. I try to apply what I learned in the United States to what I will do in the future. Like I'm studying now in the Japanese, American or Japanese migrants in the United States as a marginalized group. And then in the future, I want to focus on marginalized group in Japan, such as foreigners or, racial minority or gender minority in Japan. I think this is a very important thing for me as a Christian and as a, scholar.
And thank you for watching our podcast. We hope that your hearts have been warmed with this powerful testimony of faith and of Christianity in Japan. Thank you for watching us, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.